Hello, my friends. Welcome. It's nice to have you with us. I wanted to talk to you a little bit tonight about secrets revealed. Um, that's an interesting kind of phrase. It first popped up in my kind of awareness many years ago when Cliff High suggested that his WebBot program had been predicting that secrets revealed would be a major kind of source of disruption at a time in the future that turns out to be now. And this is about I don't know, a long time, 4 years ago at least or more. I can't remember exactly. But it's been a great deal of, it's been a rather long time that suggested that there would be a period of time that would be generally characterized and kind of fueled by the secrets being revealed from one place or another. Now, I always presumed that those were kind of classified military government kind of secrets that would be revealed, and there would things that would be coming out of the Department of Defense or some intelligence community or something from black programs, like when they first in 2017 acknowledged that there was a program that DOD had where they were monitoring and evaluating UFOs, right? And so that would be a secret that would be revealed. And so that was kind of the general characteristics of the what I was kind of presuming, looking downstream and building, scenarios and potential situations where built on and as a derivative of other things that we're aware of, that it would force these kind of secrets to be revealed. One of those things was that the loss of confidence in the government would generate an increasing number of people who wouldn't be paying the taxes. They would that would squeeze the government. They wouldn't be able to fund some of the agencies. People that previously were working for the government would be on the street. It was a parallel of the fall of the Soviet Union scenario. They're on the street. They can't support their families. They're looking around saying, what do I have that's of value that I can sell, that I can get some income? And in the case of the Soviet Union, at least they started offering nuclear weapons and any number of other kind of things. Just about anything that they knew was first, you could buy, and I can assure you that the United States took full advantage of that kind of opportunity at the time. But you can see that kind of economic squeeze and that kind of possibility that would generate in particular situations where these kind of ideas, these things would come out. And certainly, if you look at what Martin Armstrong talks about how that you're going to have a period of global civil war uprising. I mean, who's going to pay their taxes during a civil war? And so you can see that in that kind of dimension, any of a number of things come down that could force or encourage or the exposure of these kinds of things. Never did I anticipate it would be Donald Trump. It just really just came out of the blue, in a sense, that said that Trump would be the principal driving force that would go into this system. And it's not, as it turns out, these black program secrets that reveal that they've had 0 point energy devices for 50 years or anything like that. No, the secrets that are coming out are all about the fraud and abuse and waste and other things inside of the government, and paying Social Security to 130-year-old people and all kinds of wild and crazy things, and that are revealing in ways that are really quite shocking to me as an American, that this is exposing the depth of the corruption within our government all over. In almost every agency you go, they're going into, they're finding these deep relationships and where they've been compromised in a variety of different kind of ways, and they're literally capturing billions and billions of dollars worth of these programs and shutting them down and so on. And so that was a big surprise, and I don't think we've even begun to see what's likely to come out of that. I mean, there's all these talk about whether there's really any gold in Fort Knox, and that they're going to go in there and open the thing up, and Lord knows if something like that turns out to be there isn't any gold in there, then it just goes to, Fort Knox has this interesting emotional relationship to Americans, and that is that it's the epitome of stability and the essence and of the thing that holds all of the funds and the currency and the whole financial system in the United States. I mean, it's emblematic of all of that. And if all of a sudden you find out there wasn't anything there, which they've been saying, different sources have said for a long time, but if it suddenly became clear and generally available, then it would be a body blow to the American society. I mean, it would really kind of open the door to believe any of a number of all of the other kind of things that are being proposed or being exposed are really true. And you can see that would be a path on the way to a civil war, of implosion of the country. But it turns out that there are other kind of secrets that might be revealed in the middle of all of this that kind of compound the whole problem and the whole situation. And they really don't have anything to do with governments and other kind of things like that. It's and you're starting to find these kinds of ideas are working their way systematically into the middle of the kind of the zeitgeist, into the space where we all kind of live, and they all contribute again to this notion that from any of a number of fronts, we're finding out that we really don't know what in the world was going on, and then we've been lied to, if you will, from many different places. I mean, certainly it's the case in terms of climate change and the business with COVID and the shots and and some of those kinds of things. But it works its way kind of in a bigger and deeper and more fundamental kind of way. And so there would be some people, I'm surprised at the number of people I found who are intrigued, at least, by the whole idea that in fact our world is a flat world and not a spherical one. I mean, that if it ever turned out to be that we're in some kind of a Truman Show kind of thing, that's enough to really pull the plug on a whole lot of stuff. You've got this idea of simulations, and that we live in a simulation that's kind of working its way into the system. And it's one thing to think about that at an arm's length and kind of conceptually, and see the movie Matrix and so on. But it's really quite a different thing when that idea kind of settles down and you start to say, wait a second, we're in a video game or something like that. I mean, what's that mean about God and purpose of your life, and what consciousness is? And it goes to really deep kind of existential kind of questions about what this is. And you can see that those kind of things coming into that. Well, there's another area as well where this stuff is coming along, and it's in the area of reincarnation. We've all kind of worked our way into the space, even if we started, as I did, as a very conservative Christian family in the Midwest, where the idea of reincarnation was some kind of an anathema that was generated by the devil or something, or the Methodists or something. That it was really, it was stupid stuff. But the more you kind of work your way away from those very rigid kind of frameworks and those environments, you find out that there's all kinds of things that point to this notion of reincarnation. I mean, I used to sit on the science board of the National Institute for Discovery Science. And, one of the things we were initially interested in is life after death. And so we had scientists coming in from major universities explaining, the little kids that could tell you all about their life before and take you over to a town and finger different adults and say, that's my uncle, and I'll tell you all about him, and so on. And, nobody, it's really rather compelling that the whole process is really quite real. And so it became kind of a tenet, a basic kind of idea of how the whole system worked. And that and I became so convinced of it that I went out of my way to try. And when people who were close to me would die, I would go approach psychic and intuitive friends of mine who had the ability to do so, presumably, to contact them and make sure they went to the light and that they got to, so that they could get recycled, and in the best way possible. I mean, I thought that's the way it worked. And now, so led by perhaps David Icke, and certainly with other folks chiming in and bringing in other kind of perspectives. By the way, the whole reincarnation thing was fueled and supported by people, psychologists, and regression therapists, and others who have thousands and thousands of examples and case studies of people that they had regressed into certain places, and they would explain, and with common kind of explanations and how this all worked. And he went through this process. And at the Monroe Institute, where I used to be the member of the board of the directors down there. I mean, there was, one program where Focus, whatever it was, 28 or something, where you went to that space after where you died, and you could see where you could get briefed, and where they kind of teed up the new options, and you could select what kind of life you wanted to be, and so on. So, I mean, it's kind of like it's out there, and it's pretty real. And I got all these repeated kind of indications that said, that's the way it works. But now there's starting to be a new set of ideas and things that are getting inserted. And like I suggested, David Icke, perhaps, for me at least, was the first guy who started to talk about this, but there's been others as well. And they started to raise really just fundamental logical questions, things that you would have thought that we would, you would have thought about earlier. Things like, so the basis of reincarnation is that human beings need to have all of these experiences, not only in this lifetime, but subsequent lifetimes and previous lifetimes. They need to have all of these experiences because the creator needs to learn about himself and itself and the many kind of varieties of things that, might be there that it hadn't so far experienced. I've interviewed somebody the other day and I asked them about this, and they said, well, the eye can't see itself. And so and so you need these kinds of other kind of external events that telegraph and communicate, but what you can't see yourself or something, and this was a smart guy. And I was saying to myself, are you telling me that God has eyes like we have eyes, and that he is limited in the way that humans are, and that's what you're going to base your argument on this whole thing on? Are you essentially telling me with this argument that God is needy? I mean, that's what you're essentially saying. You're saying that God requires, he wants this, he doesn't have it. Yet, even in my conservative religious background, is beat into us over and over again, and omniscient and omnipresent, omnipotent, that this God figure was everything. And then you move yourself into this space where most of us operate now, and there's all this oneness, right? It's just one. There's only one, and we are all God, and it's only one. And I kind of back into that and say, so God is everything, but he needs some more things that he doesn't have because it's not part of everything. I mean, the logic is inverted. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And you say, so why? What would that make sense for? This is kind of like Greg Braden, and he talks about all these different kind of inputs and things that people trying to do to the earth and so on. And he keeps saying, well, doesn't work for humans. It's not benefit humans. That doesn't benefit humans. That doesn't benefit humans. That doesn't benefit humans. So who does it benefit? Well, it benefits somebody else. And so the argument is kind of the same, is that, so what, who benefits here? What's the benefit of all of this? Because I mean, the logic does, the logic really doesn't hold up. And so you start saying that that this whole thing sounds kind of like it's contrived, right? That if the logic doesn't hold up, it's a little bit as though there's some other force in play or something else that's just contrived. I mean, they've got us parachuted into the middle of this thing, and they keep reinforcing it, and so why? What would be the force that would be trying to do this thing? Well, if you then, and kind of work your way around the edges of this space and the new ideas and the new concepts that are kind of working their way toward the center of the box that we all live in, if you will, then you've got all this business about reptilians and archons and jinn, and the fact that we coexist and live in the same kind of space with all these entities that are other dimensional and can show up in our space and have extraordinary capabilities. Some things they can't do that we can do, but they can get in your brain and give you ideas. They can shape shift and show up in front of you like anybody, anything that you want to. I mean, I had a friend of mine who sat in a cocktail party with me one night, and I don't know, I can't remember where it was, up in Boston, maybe it was, and said, "Well, I was standing on the Avebury, outside of Avebury, and the plane up there out in England, and I saw a UFO turn into a helicopter and then into a raven as it moved across the sky." I mean, this man had no reason to lie to me. I mean, I immediately felt that that was an Archon. That's what they can do. They can shapeshift. They can become whatever you'd like. They could be an angel. They could be a man in black. They can do all kinds of things and be any of a number of the kind of iconic images and, you know, individuals and experiences that we're familiar with, and that we kind of ascribe to something else. And so what is the basic? So these guys are here. I mean, there's all these stuff from the Pleiadians, the Barbara Marciniak, and the Gnostic Gospels, and on that all say they're for real and they're really here. And what's the kind of the key characteristic of them? They live off of the negative energy that the humans beings generate. They live off of this raspy, rough energy that's associated with fear and terror and pain and all of those kinds of things. And so their incentive is to keep all of that going. And that you ask yourself, why in the world can't humans get smart? I mean, and we've been killing ourselves forever and having wars, and it never resolves anything. And why in the world does that keep happening? Well, there's good reason to believe, and the Archons themselves supposedly, reportedly say, well, we programmed it into your DNA, you know, hundreds of thousands of years ago, that you would generate the conflict rather than cooperation, and that, you know, and the byproduct of that is wars. And the reason why we need that is because it keeps us going. You know, we get nourished from all of that. Wow. I mean, that's a long that's a long way from the Bible stories, you know, that I grew up on. And so, you know, that in itself is kind of like a secret revealed kind of thing that is showing up. But you but it's more than that. But it's more than that, because these guys are driving and running the whole system on this planet. And the more I've learned about it, and now guys like David Icke says that kind of the usual suspects, Archons, reptilians, jinn, are all the same. They're synonymous. You know, different people call them different things, but they're essentially all the same kind of guys. And so they're all in here. And you know, they may be in the earth. They might come from somewhere else who, you know, nobody knows for sure. There are a lot of kind of ideas about them, but they're here. And what they say, essentially, I mean, if you read Barbara Marciniak's books, which in the end they admit that they're not the Pleiadians that they've been talking about are really the Archons. That's us. Yeah, yeah. And or the reptilians, they call them the Lizzies, the lizards, the Lizzies. And so you know, it's starting to torque everything when you get in the middle of this, because we all think, oh, the Pleiadians, oh, the good guys came down from the Pleiades, and you know, some of them are around here and they look like us. Well, now, well, maybe some. Anyway, it's confusing. But in any case, these guys are in play. And they're here and they're engaged. I'm a futurist. I'm interested in these kinds of things and what they are. And so I've looked into it. And as it turns out, I have a friend who, through his experiences at the Monroe Institute, found himself catapulted out into another kind of space and suddenly found himself surrounded by all of these reptilians. And the reptilians find out about him, and they're all they worship him. Why? Because apparently he was the commander of all of the reptilians when in the Archons or whatever, when they captured 300,000 years ago, when they captured this planet. And that he's like George Washington for the reptilians or something, and so he figured out how to talk to him and keep talking to him on a regular basis. And he gets to the place where he thinks that he negotiates a deal, and that he works out a thing where the leadership says, yeah, it's not, we don't need to do this anymore. It's clearly the tide is turning against us, and we're going to kind of break away, and we're not going to support all of this negative stuff that's going on. We're going to go do something else that presumably generates some kind of benefit to them. But you've got this whole kind of lash up of all these amazing seemingly kind of amazing things that are kind of coming to the fore, and with lots of different kind of support from different people that are all saying that this world is really different than what we've been told and what we've thought. Now, so these Archons, if they're doing what they say they're doing, and if they've really been trying to dominate this planet, and that they really live off all this negative energy that humans generate, then the thing that kind of wipes them all out, the biggest threat there is to them, would be if all the humans quit having wars and being painful, and we're happy and glad and all this. I mean, David Wilcock, in fact, says, if there was some giant event like the equivalent of the death of Princess Diana, that was a very positive and joyous thing that generated joy and happiness across the planet, in one day, all of the Archons would die, all the reptilians would die, because you'd take away their lunch. Right? I don't know, maybe, who knows? But anyway, the idea is there that says that this is kind of really like the basics of what supports the essence of how we operate. And they need the fuel, they need the food, they need the energy that keeps them going. And remember, they can do shape shifting and all these other kinds of things. And what it looks like is that they have designed this whole reincarnation machine as a device to keep recycling human beings, so that they can keep them in this situation, in this system, where we generate angst and pain and and anger and all of those kinds of things, so that they can stay alive. I mean, it's in its own way, it's like the way we raise cattle and chickens and whatever else, is that we try to build an environment that is supporting to them, so that sometime we can turn them into food, right? That's kind of like the same thing. Is there anything else that supports that idea? Well, yeah, sure. They give us this argument that says or this explanation that says, well, a couple of them that says, well, one, you've got this karma that you've generated in your past lives, and you've got if the conditions are right, you have to kind of work that off in this life. And you say, wait a second, how is this? I don't know about these things. I don't, in these past lives. It could have been 100 years, 100 past lives again, or thousands of them, or something like this. And you're saying this kind of residual stuff keeps carrying along, and I'm not even don't even know what it is, and yet I'm being banged around and messed with in this life by things that supposedly it's my fault that I don't know anything about it. I mean, and then there's the thing that says that, well, we've also made it so that you can't remember your past lives. I mean, so you lose the ability to, you come in here and, it maybe it's with like the case with these little kids, you remember some of this stuff for a few years, but then you lose the ability to remember it all. And you say to yourself, so tell me how that works, and what's the benefit of that? If the purpose of this work, of this experience, of this human experience, which is the way they justify it and explain it, what's the purpose of life? It's to learn. It's to learn things that you haven't learned before by having all these experiences, so that you become something better and you go out better than you came in, right? But if you go out and then you can't remember what happened, then you got to start all over again. Somehow that isn't a winner. I mean, that really doesn't get there very fast, wherever there is. There's something structurally wrong about that. And then if you then lay it into this archonic kind of mindset or framework, then you can start to say, well, wait a second. If you want to keep breeding, like you breed cattle or some other kind of things, if you want to keep breeding these animals, these humans, if you want to, so that they keep producing all this negative energy so that you can live. I mean, it's just exactly kind of the same thing that what we do. Then this would be the way to do it. I mean, this is a smarter, kind of more sophisticated kind of way, but it seems to work the same way. And then how does this kind of transition work when you die? I mean, I've had a number of people that are close to me that have died recently. I mean, it seems to be come with living long enough, I guess. And my brother died a couple of months ago. And so kind of jacks you into thinking about these kinds of things at those periods of time. And you say, so how does this process, this transition process work? Well, there's all kinds of feedback that you get from, you can get a psychic and plug in and catch them as they're leaving, kind of. And I mean, our friends have done this. I've done it for folks, and they explain, well, yeah, well, there's a light up here and the what, and you go with this, and then you get these, and they describe these different kind of experiences and so on. And what's this light thing that you're all supposed to go to? They made this thing, go to the light, go to the light. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do when you kind of make this transition. You're supposed to go to the light. And then what happens? Well, what's the common thing that happens? You go to this light and you're met by these angels or your parents or your dog or something that is really emotionally you're really tied to. And what do they try to do? They say, come on, and come in and we'll go, and they try to encourage you to come inside the system and make that decision. Remember, you get to make the decision always. And so they're trying to influence that process so that you could get in, and then you'll learn more. And they try to tell you how that, there are what new things that you can learn. And they have a little sales pitch about how that you could get started over again, and you can come back and you can really do good and do better than you did the last time. yeah, but you can't remember what, it sounds a little, like a little used car salesman like to me at this point, because it doesn't work. It doesn't benefit us. I mean, how do you learn from your experience 300 lifetimes ago that you can't remember, and so on? Clearly, the benefit, if you go down this line like Greg Braden does, and you look at all these things, it says who benefits, who benefits, who benefits. Well, they benefit. Not we. We don't benefit. There's no in this going to heaven business or increasing your consciousness process and all of the different kind of modalities and the ideas that are in this kind of space. None of those work if you just get pumped back into the system again, and you got to work your way through the kind of common problems and issues, if not the extraordinary ones that they justify saying that you need this experience because you've never had this one before or something like that. I mean, the thing just doesn't work. Well, then I've been exposed. David Icke talks about it. And then I've personally been exposed to some folks who have died, and when you plug into them, if you catch them early enough, they say, well, yeah, there's a white light up there, but there's a door over on the left-hand side or wherever. And if you go through that door, then it's the exit. It's the exit ramp outside of you get outside of the reincarnation loop, and you get into a place that's of extraordinary joy and wonder, and and you have increased your consciousness. I mean, it's ascension. It's whatever you want to call all of this stuff going that we talked about. I mean, I have a friend, his wife was very explicit when she died. He explained it all and said, no, we got tricked. He had a set of questions he asked, and she said, and he says, did we choose to come to this earth? And she said, well, we chose, but we got tricked. She said, we were up there in this sixth or seventh dimension or whatever it was, and there were these calls for help that were coming from the earth saying, come down, please help us. And we were trying to be charitable and humanitarian. We're trying to be charitable and to be helpful. And so we decided that we'd go down there and help. And when you got down there, it was so thick and you couldn't get out. And we got trapped down in the space. Well, golly, they never told me about that before. So anyway, the point to all of this is that to what's evolving here is a whole new cosmology. There is an ontology. I don't know what the correct word is, but there's a whole new way of trying to understand what this is all about. I mean, you keep on the side of this thing that you've got this simulation business. And I mean, well, what's the simulation? Well, this reincarnation thing could be the simulation, right? It's the machine that we're in the middle of, and it's running us around. I mean, this is really big stuff. And you talk about secrets revealed. Let me tell you, when you start pulling the strings on these kinds of things, and you decide that they really have kept this away from them. This has been a secret that we've not understood before, and now it's being revealed. It just, in really deep, fundamental ways, it starts to pull the threads on the fabric that supports, that we all are dependent upon. And so, what we've got is a very interesting thing happening here. That on multiple levels and other kind of certainly different kind of quadrants, if you will, or vectors, but certain maybe even dimensions. What's happening is that the very essential aspects of who we are, or we think that we are, or whatever, are being called into question. And we don't have the time here to spend time talking about extraterrestrial life and what that contributes to this, but it's another one of those kind of variables that, when they show up, then everything kind of changes. And so this is some really big stuff, and it's really, really fascinating, to me at least, to get exposed to all of this and to try to essentially roll with it, to embrace the ideas and to think about them, and not to fight them, but to try to see where they lead and what they point to, and what's this bigger, more expanded awareness that they expose us to. And so the whole secrets revealed thing is gonna go for a good while here, and it's gonna show. It seems to be like it's gonna show up from all kinds of places, and it will, essentially untether us from all of the things that have held us, that have given us stability and security, and untethered us so that we could, if you will, move up, float up, whatever the imagery you want is, into a different space, to where we see ourselves and we see this world in quite a different way. So it's going to be interesting. So we'll come back and talk a little bit more about it later on. Say thank you.